Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is Cinesmack! And the winner is...
Hello, Cinesmacketeers, and welcome to bout number 140 of Cinesmack, the podcast about films by filmmakers. I am your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me tonight is our panel of award-winning judges. First, filmmaker and owner of One Genome Short Productions, Cabral, those aren't pillows, Rowald.
I've never seen a man get picked up by his testicles before.
Second, filmmaker and owner of Arizona Ink Studios, Andrew. Yeah, but Daddy says I'm the best at it, Zumwalt.
Watch his program, we buy his toys, we go to his movies. He owes us. Doesn't he owe us? Huh? He owes the Griswolds, right? Fucking A, right? He owes us.
Third, filmmaker and owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom. Larry Bird doesn't do as much ball handling in one night as you do in an hour, Haggis.
This is no longer a podcast. It's a quest. It's a quest for fun, and you're going to have fun, and I'm going to have fun, and we're all going to have so much fucking fun. We're going to need plastic surgery and move our goddamn smiles.
Fourth, writer, actor, and director, Kyle Honky Lips. Fine.
I think you're all fucked in the head.
All right. Let's poke the monkey.
Ladies and gentlemen, burned out baddies and frazzled fighting families, welcome to the main event. Tonight, two tales of ill-fated travel go bumper to bumper in a dash to their destination. Which will cross the finish line first, and which will be too little, too late. In the first quarter, from 1987, written and directed by John Hughes, starring Steve Martin, John Candy, and Layla Robbins. Planes, trains, and automobiles. In the second quarter, from 1983, written by John Hughes, directed by Harold Ramis, starring Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo, and Anthony Michael Hall. National Lampoon's Vacation.
All right, so Planes, Trains, and Automobiles has been on our list for a very long time because we weren't really sure what to put it up against. And finally, last year, when we were talking about episodes, we decided to put this up against Vacation. So both road movies, you know, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, road movie plus Thanksgiving, but written by the same guy. We're all very familiar, of course, with his movies. So let's get right into it with our first round, writing.
I tried to look at these movies from a different perspective, due to the fact that they were both, written in the 80s. Our mind's eye has changed. We talked a little bit about, before we started recording, different perspectives and how these movies hit us differently. So I'm trying to look at it specifically from the 80s standpoint. There is a lot of what we would consider 80s traditional comedy in both of these movies. And that was just the time period. That was the thing. They do a lot of really, for two road movies, they do a lot of really good, funny jokes so well that they have made specific scenes and bits are classics in a sense. So when people talk about like National Lampoon's Vacation, they talk about this one scene, or they talk about that scene, and they talk about the bits that are happening inside of the movie. I know one of the famous ones that gets parodied a lot is when they're in downtown Chicago and they're driving through, and he's like, "This is our chance to enjoy the plight of the Chicago and enjoy that." They hear a gunshot and he goes, "Roll them up."
Just real quick, that was East St. Louis.
Oh, East St. Louis. Sorry. So those moments and those bits are throughout. And when it felt like the writing, especially for National Lampoon's Vacation, it felt like each scene was a different bit. Like they built everything up to go to the punchline. Not to say that that's a bad thing. That was, I would say, a similar style to a lot of the comedy that was going on in the 80s. They would do these sections, they'd build up, hit the punchline, and then they'd go to the next scene. And they accomplished that really well with the National Lampoon's Vacation being one of the first, because obviously they carried it on to make at least 3 more movies. And then now they've got National Lampoon's Everything, This and That, and they even did Rusty when he was older, going to Wally World with his family. And so it was Rusty, right? Somebody correct me.
Yes.
Yeah, it was Rusty. That's what I thought.
It was Rusty.
And so, they have carried this on. So they have built these characters that make you feel like they're an everyday family and get in these goofy situations, and you look at it and you go, yeah, that could probably happen to my family. Now, sometimes they're a little over the top, and that's where the comedy part of it comes into play. But they take these normal, going on a road trip, we're driving, we're stopping, and we're seeing family we haven't seen in a long time, and they escalate the situation to what would be normal and take it over the top. And that's what makes these really funny and well done. With Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, not only is it a road movie, I consider a little bit of a buddy film, and it's kind of a star-crossed buddy film in the sense where they start off pretty much hating each other. They don't really like each other. Well, I would say that John Candy's character, Del, pretty much likes everybody. Like, he's kind of just everything is hunky-dory sunshine. And Neil is the one that is probably the most gruff at the very beginning. And them basically building this weird relationship that normally, in any case, they would never actually have that kind of relationship. They probably would never be friends if it wasn't for all the weird situations they were put in. But again, a pretty traditional story with just some really great comedy written into it. Some of it that goes well over the top. I mean, their car catches on fire and they still drive it. And so there's just some really humorous moments that I think they do a nice job building this relationship between the two of them that, yes, you probably wouldn't get in quite as wacky of situations. But again, they feel like, you go on that weird road trip with someone, and by the time you're done with it, because of the wacky and weird adventures that you've had, you end up with a lifelong friend. And I think that actually appeases to a lot of people, and potentially has happened to some people, maybe not in quite the crazy way that this has been written, but you definitely have similarities. And I think that's what's really important about both of these movies in the writing is they appeal to the normal person, the everyday person, the person that is, this is a family man, or I am on my way to my family Thanksgiving, or I'm just this random dude and I like everybody and I'm trying to make the best of all my situation. There's something that you can appeal to both sets of these characters that make it feel so genuine. And I think that's why we get trapped in, and that's why we laugh, because we're like, oh, I remember this one time when I was on this road trip and X, Y, and Z happened. So you have these relationships. And it was back in the day when this is what people did. People went on road trips for family vacation. Flying every single time wasn't as popular. At least it wasn't for my family. We drove everywhere, and I would never give it. I'd never give that up. Those memories are some of the best that I've ever had. So it's really neat how the writing of these can really appeal to you as a person. Now, I'm hoping that some of the other wonderful panelists will bring out some of the stuff that we were talking about before the podcast, and how watching them now in your life situations, how the writing has changed for you and how that story has affected you differently. So I'm hoping somebody will, maybe Tom, I think you were talking about it a little
sure
bit. But maybe
it
you
is.
want to save it for later. I don't want to preempt you. Sorry.
I was going to say it for overall, but that's
okay,
well,
then
whatever.
save it for overall. No.
Bad category. Yeah, I'll talk about that later. I think here's we have two of these movies again that are like Harold and Kumar, where the plot is very, very simple. Either get from Chicago to California or get New York to Chicago, and they're our heroes are faced with these obstacles one after another. And it's amazing to me that these movies are still so revered and celebrated now. They're really good movies, but it's always tough for me to figure out, like, what is it about these types of movies from the 80s that we love so much even now, because there were hundreds of movies that came out and these two seem to endure. I think part of it's the cast, but certainly the simplicity of the story. What's that saying that I'm gonna forget, something about elegance and complexity, and I don't know. But anyway, they're both very simple stories that just kind of stay out of the way of the great acting that's in there. And John Hughes has always done a really good job telling those kinds of stories. So I'm starting to think about John Hughes movies, and I'm reconsidering my recommendation later. Damn it. So now I'm kind of distracted.
I think some of the differences we'll talk about later will fall into the acting and directing category, but being written by the same person, you get a very similar vibe, and to have someone write two road movies in the same decade, that's pretty rare. It only really ever happened in the 80s, right? We don't get that all that much these days. These movies really stand on the acting, the jokes, the relatability of them. The writing, I think, is fine. It's contrived in places. There are one too many breakdowns, one too many detours, one too many accidents in time. And both of them go to silly lengths in spots that kind of make you question the reality of the world they're in. But we can get to that later. As far as scripts go, though, I feel like John Hughes knew, if I write this plot and give it to talented comedic actors, which there are a glut of in the 80s that I know of and will work with me, they'll make a magic out of it. And they did. I really think that's how these movies got elevated. If they starred other people or had different just had different casts, they probably wouldn't be nearly as memorable. But Clark Griswold has become synonymous with dads our age, and a little older, so he's become an iconic character. And Steve Martin and John Candy are great together. But I think the writing is good. The jokes, there are some really great gags and really good jokes, especially in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. But a lot of that, I think, relies on the strength of the acting and the directing going into those. So good writing, a very memorable scripts now, but I think a lot of that falls on other pieces of the movie.
I agree.
I think on it, they're very similar in ways. And if I hadn't watched them back to back, basically, I might not have noticed quite how similar they were. There were a lot of kind of, I felt like recycled jokes in them. There was, and locations. You guys can probably answer this for me. Where was John Hughes from? Was he from Chicago?
Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously Chicago plays a big role in both of these movies. The main characters are from Chicago, and they also, for some reason, St. Louis plays a big role in these. So they both go through St. Louis. But I felt like there were kind of some like recycled jokes. The vibrating bed in the hotel room, the dog that was kind of violent, the singing. While they're traveling, the singing, because they tried to be singing on the bus in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and then obviously the, Clark and the kids were singing in the car in Vacation, and I feel like a lot of the jokes in some ways were kind of recycled, but I think the use of those jokes was better in one movie than another. And I felt like both of them kind of were just like a series of mishaps that were kind of loosely tied together. It's just kind of like, okay, well, let's think of some goofy things that can happen to these people on a road trip, and then we'll just kind of we'll just put them in sequence and see what happens. It wasn't necessarily all that coherent of a story. It was simple, like Tom said. Enjoyable. Don't get me wrong. It's not necessarily a criticism of these, but it did seem like it's like, well, we've just got some gags that we want to tie together, and let's put some characters around this. I also feel like character development was better in one than another. Actually, when I was watching Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I don't know. Do you guys? I felt like there were certain things that were kind of left out, like they cut some things from the story, it's like they had to make it shorter for whatever reason, and some things were kind of missing to me, like the relationship between Steve Martin and his wife. It wasn't really strong as far as like why she wanted him home so badly and why it was so important for him to be home, and those kinds of things. And so I felt like, I don't know, I felt like stuff was missing. And her reaction at the very end was a little, it seemed a little odd. And I felt like the characters were a little bit better developed in Vacation. So I don't know. Yeah. It's interesting to see two movies written by the same guy with kind of recycling some of the same jokes.
But I guess I would say that it was kind of that was a John Hughes thing. Like John Hughes was really good at picking out these stories, these little quips, and being able to take them in a synonymously, basic story and put these little funny moments together to make an entire story. And it's not just these two movies, I would argue. John Hughes does it a lot. And I think that's part of his writing style and maybe even part of his charm and how he wrote a lot of those comedies that he's done. Maybe I'm off my rocker, but it just seems he has you could look at quite a few of other John Hughes comedies, especially during the 80s, that have a similar structure, let's say. Simple story. Lots of like this was a funny story. If we did this, and this in this order, it would make this a full story and make this even funnier. And he has that way of doing that.
The other thing too, I'd say, that struck me too is that Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is a bit more schmaltzy than National Lampoon's Vacation. That's, and I don't know if it's because, it's about, two people who love each other trying to bring them together. And then you don't really get that with, a family traveling together to get to their location or their destination. But I did kind of notice the schmaltziness of it, but
and I think a lot of times like really good comedies can blend those things together. Like there's the comedy, there's this really kind of like awkward character and that kind of thing, but then you eventually come to really like them, and some of the best comedies actually mix a little bit of drama in there with it, and I think they attempted to do that with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but didn't maybe quite nail it with that. And I think I think John Candy. Well, I'll save this for the next category, but John Candy could pull that off.
Okay, boys.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Finish your thought, Kyle.
I have one. Damn it. I can say
one.
One.
Right. There are important inciting incidents and motivations that are missing in these movies because they're always leaning towards the joke and the funny and not so much about the plot. And I think that's very typical of like these 80s comedy movies.
True. All right. Let's put it to a vote. Andrew.
Oh, I'm going to go with National Lampoons for this one.
All right. Gabe?
Yeah, I think the characters are better developed in Vacation, so I'm going to go with National Lampoon's Vacation.
Okay, Kyle?
Yeah, National Lampoon's Vacation.
And Tom?
I think... Actually, I don't know how I was going to vote on any category tonight coming into this. I think I'm going with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but I feel like on paper, just had these scripts written on paper in front of you, I think Planes, Trains, and Automobiles would be a better sale. And I just don't think the execution did the script justice. So,
okay. John Hughes' script was inspired by an equally ill-fated family trip to Disneyland when he was 5 years old, which was what his National Lampoon magazine article Vacation 58 was about. The script called for Disneyland as the Griswolds' destination, but Disney objected, pointing out that they are open 365 days a year, which remained true until the COVID-19 pandemic. John Hughes also said he was inspired to write Planes, Trains, and Automobiles after an actual flight he was on from New York to Chicago. The flight was diverted to Wichita, Kansas, taking him 5 days to get home.
Yikes.
Yeah. I've been to Wichita. I understand why he would want to write a script after that. Okay. Second round. Acting.
I think the acting is very different in these two movies, and I really love Steve Martin. I think he's actually a really great actor, but I don't know that this is his best performance. And I think it'll be fun to hear your guys' ideas on John Candy in these two. Obviously, John Candy has a much larger role in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And like I hinted at in the previous category, I think you get to see a little bit of his ability to do some dramatic chops. I think one of my theories is that a lot of the best comedians actually are really good at dramatic parts. And I think that's part of being a good comedian is understanding the drama of life and being able to kind of utilize that for comedy. And I think John Candy had that. I think Steve Martin has that. I'm not sure that Chevy Chase has that, but I'll tell you what, I really love Chevy Chase. And it's too bad that I've heard, things about him as a person that make me kind of not like him so much as an actor because he's got kind of his shtick. He's in some ways kind of the same in all of his movies, but I kind of like his shtick, and I think he's really good as Clark in, Vacation. And I think the ensemble in general is stronger in Vacation. We've got some really great cameos from really great comedic actors. The main characters, even the kids, are pretty good, and some of them went on to have successful acting careers. So I don't know. I feel like for me, the ensemble is stronger in Vacation than the pair in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Although I love Steve Martin and John Candy, and I think they have good chemistry together. I just feel like there's just a lot more character development in Vacation, and therefore a lot more for the actors to work with. But I don't know. I'd be interested in hearing what you guys think.
Something that I noticed with Chevy Chase in watching these is that I think he's at some of his best when he is by himself and he has some kind of prop to play with. Whether it's a golf club or a string of Christmas lights or a sandwich. I mean, you just give him something and he is really good about just producing laughs in that way. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this back in writing, but I guess it's more of an acting thing. I'd be interested to know. I mean, we've all heard stories about Chevy Chase, and I'd be interested to know how much of Vacation was written by John Hughes and how much of it was improvising. There are stories from Fletch where he, would ad lib a lot, and he did more and more as he went on through his career. And I'm wondering if Vacation is one of those movies where we catch him before he. Before that ego kind of inflated and he kind of felt he knew better than the writer. But I think, he's very funny. And
Fletch,
this is one of his best roles.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of his iconic roles. And I think I love the Fletch movies too. I think he's fantastic in those. But, it's kind of, if you compare them, they're very Chevy Chase. They have he has a lot of the same mannerisms and that kind of thing. I don't know that he has a lot of range, but what he does really well, and it's really entertaining.
Yeah, you see a lot of that in the 80s and 90s too with comedic actors. They have shticks and a persona that they use, and that's basically what they are. They're the star of this movie, and they're playing themselves all the time. So what about these two movies is you get one of the same actors like John Candy, right? Who gives, I think, a very interesting, deeper, heartfelt performance in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, where I think he's just great. And then in National Lampoon's Vacation, he's basically playing like an SCTV character. He really is just a one-note character. He doesn't have anything else to do. Probably just came up with the characters like, I'm going to play this for the 5 minutes I'm in the movie. The ensemble in Vacation is really good, and when we've talked about that, there are some obvious, I think, highs and lows. Beverly D'Angelo is great as the mother. Chevy Chase is great as Clark Griswold. The kids are really good in this movie, which isn't always the case because there's a rotating door of Griswold kids. Aunt Edna's terrible, and not in a fun way. She is acting in a different movie. She's acting in a movie 20 years before the 80s. It's like she's an old actress who only knows how to act in black and white movies.
I think she literally is.
Yeah, but
how dare you,
Randy
sir.
Quaid is it? What? What'd you say, Mike?
I said, "How dare you, sir."
Oh, you're gonna go to you're standing Aunt Edna. I can't believe it. Yeah, Randy Quaid is pretty good in this movie. Not in it very much. He really doesn't become Cousin Eddie, in my opinion, until Christmas Vacation. That's the Cousin Eddie movie, right? But you bring his family, and I had no idea Jane Kaczmarek was in this film as a teenager. Eddie's family is really weird because it seems like some people don't belong there. It's really strange. Yeah, very weird. But yeah, Chevy Chase was great at his shtick during his heyday. And of course, it's sad to see people go on and do things that you don't agree with. But, you know, he was one of those guys who was knocking out of the park in movies in the 80s and 90s. And every time we watch a John Candy movie, I get sad because I wish he was around for another 40 years. I want to see him keep working with Steve Martins and the Chevy Chases of this world and making those movies and getting a chance to do stuff like that, because I thought he was such a special actor. Steve Martin is great. He still has one of my favorite Steve Martin lines of all time is in this movie where he's at the rental car desk asking for a car with 4 fucking wheels right fucking now. That's great. That's just great stuff.
I saved that. I thought maybe one of you guys were going to say that during the opening. I had originally had it as Tom's introduction.
I couldn't remember the whole thing, but it's great.
Oh, I'm so glad you went with the ball playing one. Thanks, Mike.
Well,
that's a great line.
It kind of goes into the writing. Just really quick, it kind of goes into the writing. I didn't think about it. It's like it's weird to me to have a John Hughes movie with the F word in it, and both of them do. It seems like he was more wholesome than that. But anyway.
I don't know how much of that's written or improv.
No.
He used to get away with more F-bombs, I think.
I think after Home Alone, he kind of started reeling it in, but no, when he was younger, I mean, Breakfast Club and Pretty in Pink, some kind of wonderful. I don't know, real.
Maybe it's just my faulty recollection of John Hughes movies.
That entire bit at the car rental place just reminds me of Seinfeld when he goes to try and rent a car. That entire scene, like it's a cleaner version in Seinfeld, but it totally reminds me of a similar. I do want to also point out that this movie does say introducing Christy Brinkley, which I thought was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, I wrote that down too. Yeah, it was like, really introducing Christy Brinkley? How's that?
There's a movie that people didn't know who she was. Yeah, I mean, again, I kind of touched a little bit this on writing, so I don't want to, rehash, but I would agree. Like the Griswold characters this family is so iconic in their weird ways. Dad is kind of out there. Mom kind of holds everything together. The 2 kids are 2 kids and they have their moments and it just all kind of works. And that set of characters, besides, the fact that they've made probably 3 really popular movies, if you want to count Vegas and then all the other ones they've done too, it really puts these characters, kind of that iconic 80s comedy family in the movies. Like you knew this was going to be a fun movie with the Griswolds. With Planes, Trains, and Automobile, Steve Martin, he's funny, but I've seen him be funnier. Like he seems like he's, and I know he's playing a role, but it seems like the John Candy character Dell is more the comedy of the group, and Steve Martin is drug along. And it feels, I don't know if weird is right, because Steve Martin can play normal, semi down to earth characters, but then he always has this goofiness to him. So to see him in this kind of straight, rough, serious role, I don't know if I could take it seriously, but it kind of works. I don't know. John Candy just seems like he's the goofball that actually drives the goofiness of the buddy film itself, and his character is the one that adds to the comedy. He's the Chris Farley to the think of what is that Black Sheep Tommy Boy.
Yeah, one.
Black
Sheep.
Either
one.
Yeah, it's Black Sheep where they go on the road trip for the campaign, and or for his dad's meatpacking, right? That's Tommy Boy, right?
No, Tommy Boy, the brake pads, the auto parts.
The brake pads.
Yeah, the brake pads, and him and Spade go on the road trip across country to sell brake pads. Right?
Yeah, and that's a classic Hollywood thing. That's Abbott and Costello with The Straight Man and the Foil. And
that's the road to whatever with
Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what it felt like with Planes. I wasn't saying that he invented it. I was just giving similarities that he has the funny John Candy and then Steve Martin that plays the straight lace, and Steve Martin just is so witty and stuff. His character seems almost out of place for that actor, because I've seen Steve Martin, in other things, and again, that's a third perspective now look at it versus then. But I don't know, that was my big character weirdness. Sorry, go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
No, I think that's a fair point. I mean, if Steve Martin, someone who's so classically funny and known for his comedy to play the straight, is probably a little unusual. So, both of these movies are loaded with people in little bit parts and cameos. I mean, Kevin Bacon is at the beginning of Planes, Trains, and
I forgot he was in it at all.
Yeah,
they showed him, and I was like, wait, Kevin, I don't remember this thing. He was in this.
He's in it actually twice too, because his wife is watching. She's having a baby with Kevin Bacon at home.
Oh, nice!
At John Hughes, and I don't know. Stole one of Mike's trivia, but who else? Oh, Brian Doyle Murray, running the campground in Vacation. If anyone ever doubts that that's Bill Murray's brother, you just show him that scene. You're just like, oh yeah, that's definitely Bill Murray's brother.
Yes.
He had a real change of career because he went on to become Clark Griswold's boss in just a few years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he must have gone back to school and moved states.
Well, John Candy lost his job as a security officer at Wally World and ended up homeless and divorced, and now he's traveling cross country with this weird
not divorced
character. So
maybe he's so traumatized that he's having like amnesia. He's created a fake life for himself.
Oh yeah, so he created Dell to cope through the loss of his job at Wally World and the scariness of him having a gun pointed at him for all that time. I mean, that's a 4 years of wandering and broken brain. I like it.
That's crazy, because Dell Griffiths is an anagram of gunpoint security.
Really?
Yeah, put your pencils down. That's it.
That must have been it.
I think work that out.
So these live in the same universe. I like
it. Yeah. I think someone who I don't think gets nearly enough credit. Anthony Michael Hall is really, really funny in Vacation.
Yeah.
Dana Barron does a good job, but Anthony Michael Hall has some really funny bits, and I think more than any of the other Vacation movies, he really feels like Clark's son. And when you have a kid that age, there are so many times where you can't tell the father and the son apart. And I think that's the best parts about Vacation, is how well they gave Anthony Michael Hall these little things to do where you're like, oh yeah, that's teenage Clark Griswold. And just setting him up for future success.
Pac-Man.
While getting trivia together, he improvised
Invaders?
putting his feet on the back of the seat.
Oh.
That was Anthony Michael Hall's choice.
Where Clark's like, what's that smell?
Yeah. Many bits in the film were improvised. Just you guys were talking about how much was improvised, including Clark's dance with his sandwich, Clark's send off to Aunt Edna, and Rusty's chugging of the beer.
Very nice.
Yep.
I do like how thinly veiled. Disney said you can't use Disney. I love how thinly veiled they made it. Like, all right, we won't do Disney. But dear Lord, could they have gotten Eddie Bracken? Could he look more like Walt Disney? I mean, it was great. The clothes and the mustache.
Yeah,
he did.
Yep. All right, let's put it to a vote, fellas. Gabe.
I think the ensemble is great in Vacation, so I'm going with that.
Wow. All right, Kyle.
On the strength of the leads, I'm going to give it to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Okay. Tom?
Not going to say this very, very often, but Anthony Michael Hall seals it for Vacation.
All right, Andrew.
I'm gonna also go with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Okay. Just real quick, guys. The reason I think I love Planes, Trains, and Automobiles so much is that moment when you find out that Dell's wife is dead and that he doesn't have anywhere to go. Like, Candy's acting in that is, wow. It's just, to me, it's great. He reminds me so much of someone that I know during that moment. It always makes me tear up.
Him sitting in the train station by himself when he comes in, that entire scene is, maybe we should talk about this in overall, but was probably one of my favorite scenes.
Right. Okay, sorry, I'm getting us off, but I just wanted to point that out in the acting.
Roy Wally. Not only was he his first name was also Roy, by the way.
And he had a pencil thin mustache like Roy Disney and Walt Disney. On instruction from John Hughes, Edie McClurg's role as a St. Louis rental car agent was partially improvised. Hughes told her to simply riff a fake phone conversation with someone about Thanksgiving plans with Steve Martin while he's waiting in line staring at her to finish up. McClurg came up with the idea to speak with her sister about who was going to make what, and adding, "You know I can't cook." Hughes asked her how she came up with those lines so quickly, and she replied that, like his scripts, she just drew it from her own life. McClurg claims to this day that random people ask her to tell them they're fucked.
Wow. She is wonderful.
Yeah, she is.
She was great.
Beautiful.
All the cast members had a terrible experience in National Lampoon's Vacation when it came to filming the scenes inside Wally World, where they rode all of the roller coasters and other rides. In the commentary, Chevy Chase mentions that many of the rides made him and the other cast members vomit, especially since they all had to ride them several times for each take. Dana Barron mentioned in the commentary that the coasters made her so sick she had to take motion sickness pills and would pass out on nearby benches between takes. Finally, Anthony Michael Hall mentions that in the shots on the roller coaster where he looked scared, he wasn't acting. His fear in those shots were genuine. And just a side, because we brought up Imogene Coca, she suffered what is believed to have been a stroke during production. Harold Ramis said they filmed the scene that morning, and by that afternoon, she couldn't remember anything they did. After getting out of the hospital, she and her husband worked together to relearn her lines and get her back on set to finish the movie.
That's insane.
Yeah.
You know, filming in an amusement park has always been a dream because, like, you get to ride the roller coasters 100 times.
Nope, not for me.
That sounds fantastic.
That's a horror story. That's a horror movie for me.
That sounds so much fun.
All right. Third round, directing.
So these movies, one being directed by John Hughes, which if you can't do a good job with your own script, you have no one else to blame. And then the other written by John Hughes, but not directed. So let's start with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which I think gives the actors, both actors, a lot of freedom to improvise. With that, there always comes a double-edged sword of letting them get out of control or say things that change the story or over-improvise in ways. And there are definitely times in the movie where you could tell, like, John Hughes thought this was really funny, but it's not moving the script forward anyway, or it's the same kind of joke over and over again. The specific one that sticks out to me is when Dell is hawking shower rings in the bus station. You know, he's obviously delivering what is improvised sales pitches to these people. And I want to say he does it like 5 or 6 times. He sells these things to people. And it just started to get on my nerves because, like, this really isn't funny. It really isn't working. but they must have thought it was funny and they just let it keep going and going. And that is what I think, is kind of the double-edged sort of improvising. And sometimes you can let things sneak into the movie because you think they're funny, but they're not funny to other people and they don't really move the story. They kind of bog things down. Other than that, though, the characters as written and portrayed by Steve Martin and John Candy, I think, are great. They have a lot of depth to them. Despite kind of starting off as one-note characters, they both go through changes and learn and grow during the story, and they, tell that with their acting talent. The supporting cast is really weak in that movie. Don't have a lot to do. We talked about it in the script too. Like his wife, other than kind of looking wistfully at the camera and falling asleep a couple times, really isn't super important. No one else in the family is super important. The kids aren't super important. We're never given a reason or made to think like why it's so important for him to get home. There isn't that family dynamic. It's really just about the road trip. In National Lampoons, you have Chevy Chase delivering an iconic performance and one he would repeat many times over. Beverly D'Angelo is a great straight actor to that foil, and his kids who love their dad but think he's an idiot. That's great. I mean, the dynamic is built on the backs of movies like this. Some of the supporting cast, I think, is a little weak in that movie as well. And it suffers from the same Planes, Trains, and Automobiles where I feel like there are one or two too many breakdowns. And it kind of veers into what's believable here. I mean, we even have this scene in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles where they're getting in a car accident and then they turn into skeletons for a moment. They peel their fingers physically out of the dashboard. I can see the John Candy turning to Satan thing as like a flash in his mind, but the rest of it seems to be played straight, like in this weird surrealist, And in National Lampoons, you have Chevy Chase wandering the desert in an act that would surely kill him. We should have never seen him again. The rest of the movie should have been a manhunt for his body.
What an asshole. Yeah. What an asshole.
And Edna dying and putting her on top of the car and all. I mean, it's just really goofy, and I know it's a comedy, but it starts to string the bounds of like what's reality, and things like that. Unless they're really, really funny, they generally irk me. So I had little issues here and there, but these are both really funny movies acted by really funny comedic actors, and there's a lot to still like here. I don't know what modern audiences would like if you showed someone who's 18 or 19 these movies and they've never seen them before, would they enjoy them the way we do? Or is it just something you get from your childhood that now kind of sticks with you? Does anybody think this is funny now, right? Or is it a generational thing? That'd be a question to ask. I don't know that answer because I'm an old man. But yeah, I think that's interesting to think about.
My kids love Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
That's good.
So, but they're kind of weird kids too. So,
well, sure.
But it's very relatable.
Yeah.
Even now.
To your point, Kyle, you were talking about selling the shower rings in the airport. So I noticed also in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, even though there's 3 words to the title, they broke the rule of 3s for comedy a lot in that movie, which is I would say abnormal for John Hughes comedies because they're normally pretty good at sticking with that. Even you can look at National Lampoon's Vacation and how they follow that comedic timing, where you do 3 things, you can repeat it 3 times, and after the 3rd time, that's it. That's when it has hit its maximum peak of funniness. And they break that a lot in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And I'm not sure if that was due to the improvisation that was happening. So it was just something that stuck out to me, and it's funny that you brought that up. So that was my comment on that. Sorry.
Yeah, I felt like, as far as the directing is concerned, we often talk about cinematography in this category, and I didn't feel like either of these movies really had much to offer from a cinematography standpoint. And there were times in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles I'm like, why did they choose this angle? Why did they choose this shot? And for movies like this, I'm not sure that cinematography is really all that important. You capture the moment on the screen, and that's maybe good enough because you've got a good performance or you've got some funny material, and you don't have to worry about is this the best angle to catch this at? But at times I felt like they were really kind of just like lazy with the cinematography in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I felt like Vacation was only marginally better in that respect. Although I did enjoy some of the car crash scenes and that kind of thing when he goes off the road and flies through the air and it just totally destroys the car. I mean that was fun to watch.
The garbage bag for the airbag.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious too. Like twice, not only once, but twice we got to see an airbag that didn't look like an airbag at all. But I don't know what their budget was exactly, and even then, I imagine it wasn't cheap to have Chevy Chase in your movie. But yeah, from a cinematography standpoint, from a sound standpoint. Editing standpoint, I don't feel like these movies really were exceptional in any way, but they were good enough to be entertaining. Don't get me wrong, both were very, very entertaining, and I'm not sure that those things were really important for the success of these two movies. But I did notice the cinematography in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was really kind of lacking at times. It's like, why did they choose that angle? We can't even see Steve Martin's face, or we can't, this is just not a good choice here.
Well, they had a helicopter budget because they got a lot of, great shots of Midwestern towns from the air and as they traveled. And I mean, if we're talking a little bit about cinematography, sorry, Tom, I didn't mean to cut you off, but one of the questions.
Yeah, you did. It's cool.
Well, no, but I mean, one of the questions I had was, we were talking about the roller coaster, how they would have shot something like that back then.
This is true.
So, Tom,
there are definitely some challenges, though. Yeah, road movies. I think road movies in general are a challenge from a cinematography standpoint because you've got to get shots inside of a car and shots of vehicles moving. And you've got a whole bunch of locations. So I'm not underestimating the challenges that they have for making a road movie. There's definitely some difficulty there. But I do think that they in certain scenes they could have made better choices as far as camera angles and lighting and that kind of stuff. It really just didn't stand out in that respect.
Well, and some of it was actual them driving in a car. Like now today, a lot of times they put that they project stuff behind them. And it's really obvious. Right. And I think they used some of that in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. At least it looked like it in a couple of scenes.
Some rear projection. Yeah.
Yeah. But, for the most part, they're actually driving in the car filming them. And that's quite incredible in itself.
Yeah, that is true, especially with the equipment that was available to them at the time. Yes. Nowadays, you and I can stick a GoPro or an Osmo or something to the outside of a car or whatever and get some decent footage. But back then, it was like not quite so easy.
I think, there's nothing really spectacular about the cinematography. I really think if you're coming down to directing, I feel like which director was able to, wrangle the actors and be able to keep the story in a cohesive way. Assemble the story in a cohesive way so that you don't feel like there's gaps in the story. And that that as, for example, from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, as they get closer to Chicago, that excitement and that frustration that goes along not yet being there go hand in hand. And do you feel that as much as you do in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles as you do in Vacation? And for me, I feel like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles did a better job of that because I felt that kind of frustration that they're so close, yet they can't quite get there. And that's something that John Hughes always does with these road movies. Did in Home Alone 2 when Catherine O'Hara was going home. That he kind of gets him 3/4 of the way there, and then he's like, and the last 5 hours wasn't a problem. When it seems like there's really good opportunity there for the chaos, right outside of town to be so close. Whereas, with Vacation, I mean, they like drop Aunt Edna off in Phoenix, and then next thing you know, they're in LA. So, I don't know. So I guess part of it's character growth, and part of it's the story. Which director did a better job, kind of keeping that anxiety alive? So,
I was more impressed that they drove for 2 weeks to go.
Jesus Christ, how slow were they going?
Because he says when they make it to Wally World, he said that they just had the worst 2 weeks of their lives driving in a car, and I'm like, holy shit! I know you guys stopped and stuff, but 2 weeks?
Yeah, because it says at the beginning 2,400 miles, so
yes!
They were only logging like 150 miles a day in the truckster. What the hell? 2
weeks, and then they have to drive back.
I knocked that shit out before breakfast.
Just real quick, I want to give you guys a rundown of the cinematographers. So Victor J. Kemper did National Lampoon's Vacation. He was also he shot. I mean, he has a pretty long list, but just going through Dog Day Afternoon, Slapshot. Let's see,
challenging there.
The Jerk. The Final Countdown,
The Jerk,
Xanadu, Mr. Mom, Cloak and Dagger, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Clue.
Oh,
one of the greatest talking horse movies ever, Hot to Trot. See No Evil, Hear No Evil. Beethoven, Tommy Boy, Jingle All the Way. Yeah, and then some direct videos towards the end there. Then
God, he's the definition of batting 500.
Yeah, and there's a lot of movies on there. And then Donald Peterman, who shot Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, was part of, let's see here, Flashdance, Splash, Cocoon, Gung Ho, Star Trek 4, She's Having a Baby, Point Break, Mr. Saturday Night, Addams Family Values, Get Shorty, Men in Black, Mighty Joe Young, and How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
A lot of Ron Howard stuff in there.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, it looks to me like both of them batted about 500.
Yeah,
with their films, which, I mean, they don't have control of that. They just get ready to shoot it and try to make it understandable as far as camera's concerned. So, all right, you guys ready to put it to a vote? Do you have anything else you want to add? I'll take that.
I'm good.
It's a no. So, Kyle.
Oh, no. I have to go first?
Choose wisely.
Oh, no.
It's like the Holy Grail.
I am going to go with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Okay. Tom?
Same. Planes, Trains, Automobiles.
Andrew?
I'm going with the Griswolds on this one.
Okay. And Gabe?
I'm going to side with Andrew. I think Vacation was a better put together film.
All right. Oh, where'd my trivia? I had to change something in here. Harold Ramis mentions that for the scene in which the family truckster jumps into the air, several of the crew members had made bets against second unit director Dick Zeiker that he couldn't jump the car more than 50 feet, even drawing lines in the sand to measure the distance. Zeiker ended up winning the bet as he jumped the car more than 50 feet.
So the assistant director did that?
Yes.
That's
Second unit. Second.
Oh,
unit.
is that Is that typical?
Yes, like usually second unit, you have them go out and do scenes where the cast isn't necessary.
Oh, so he wasn't actually driving, though.
No, I don't think so.
Stunt man.
Yeah.
Oh,
maybe it was him. Maybe it was him.
It sounded like he was doing it. Like, are you sure that's who you want doing
it
that?
It very well could be him that drove it, but my guess is that he was in charge of the unit. So
I see.
That's director John Hughes was known for staging improvisational moments for his actors in order to capture a genuine reaction. Since he was not satisfied with the Owen scene introductions after several takes, he privately instructed Dylan Baker to wipe spit in his right hand just before shaking hands with Neil Page.
That's a great reaction.
Steve Martin was not expecting this. Thus, his disgusted reaction to shaking Baker's saliva-slathered hand. The film crew reportedly exploded in laughter as Martin ran off to wash his hands immediately following the encounter. Hughes got the reaction he needed, and the footage was kept in the film.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
That's really funny.
So as a director, for any of us that have ever directed a movie here, do you turn to your associate producer and be like, hey, so you see that car over there? How far do you think you can jump it?
I wish.
You're not doing anything right now. Stunt guy's late.
Yeah.
Come on.
I'd throw Tosh in there right away. I'd send him over a ramp at any time.
See that bridge, Tosh? Jump it.
Yeah, jump it. You can do it.
You can
James
do
Watson, it's your turn. Jump that thing.
Yeah.
Jump it, James.
All right. Let's move on to our fourth and final round overall.
So one of the best parts about doing this show is that we get to go back and look at these shows that we grew up, these movies that we grew up with. You know, we've done movies like Clue and Terminator 2 and Alien and Hoosiers, and these movies that we really love, but maybe we haven't watched in a long time, and we get to kind of see them through new eyes. And that has never been more true. And Andrew kind of alluded to this earlier. This has never been more true than this episode. If I had done this episode 4 years ago, I probably wouldn't feel the same about it now. But in the last 4 years, I've driven with my kids overnight to Florida. Drove 24 straight hours to Florida. So we're in Iowa, so we drove out to Grand Canyon, Yosemite. We did pretty much the Griswold trip. San Francisco, Seattle. I mean, we've done very lengthy 70, 75-hour road trips. And so when I sat down and watched Vacation this time, it struck me on a very a completely different level than it had any time before this. Because before this, I think I probably considered myself rusty. And today, when I was watching Vacation, I'd realized that no, I'm now Clark. And that was some soul searching right there. So not a lot got done this afternoon because of that. But at the same time, though, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I've taken this new job that has me traveling a lot. I'm constantly in airports and hotels as our weird production schedules shows. And Mike can probably attest to this too, because I know you travel a lot, Mike. But they're watching Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, completely different experience this time. Now I understand Neil's frustration with trying to get home. I know nothing to the degree of what they went through, but I know what it's like to have a flight delay or getting stuck in a shitty hotel that you didn't want to stay at overnight. And just that yearning to just get to your own bed in your own house and your own people. And so that movie just takes on a whole different life now that I've personally experienced these things. And at the same time, Plane, Trains, and Automobiles really provides this like basement where if I'm at an airport and my flight gets delayed, I just think about Del and Neil and I go, could be worse. So it's this nice little comfort, this nice little warm blanket that I'm like, it could be so much worse. And I know that's not, and I know that I will eventually get home. Everyone usually does. And so, and that's the thing that really loved these two movies, choosing these two, because one is about going somewhere and the other one's about coming home, and they're just this really cool mesh of these two John Hughes movies. And I love John Hughes too. So I want to also say that the score for Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is fucking horrible. I absolutely hate the music of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It's like synthesizer's last gasp of air in the 80s, where it was just I don't like it at all. So not buying that on vinyl.
And that's definitely one of those things that ages that movie. There are certain things that age the movies. Another one I'd like to mention really quick is the computer in Vacation, where he hooks up the computer and he's got that, and it's hooked up to some old tube TV and all that. There's certain things that just age these movies.
I think it's a Commodore.
The music was one.
The Commodore, yeah.
Is it a Commodore?
Yeah.
See, but at the same time, when we did these trips, when I did these road trips with my wife and kids, we would sit down on the couch in the living room, and we have a Mac Mini hooked up to our TV, and we did that. We went through, and I was like, "Here's day by day." And so, while
Clark
the graphics,
Griswold.
what's that?
You are Clark
Griswold.
Yeah.
Hey, nobody can see me flipping you off. Yeah. So yeah, it was. Yeah. While the graphics have changed, the sentiment's still very much the same.
You just used to print them off from MapQuest because you had no other way to get the directions, and so.
Yeah, like we should talk about how these movies can't be made because of cell phones and GPS.
Right.
Absolutely.
Those two technologies
very,
were probably invented because of these movies.
Yeah, you would have to figure out a way to make them lose their phone and not be able to get a replacement.
No. They just do the old Hollywood stigma of, I can't get a signal because we're out in the middle of nowhere. It's such crap.
Yeah, in the middle of nowhere.
That's every horror movie now.
Every horror movie.
Yeah. Well, Tom, I didn't have any life-affirming realizations about myself, as I have no children and don't enjoy going anywhere via car. But it was interesting to watch these movies because I am leaving the country this weekend on vacation, and these movies have me very worried about my trip now. Because I have been on overnight delays and things like that, been stuck in eating Denny's in Dallas and staying at a hotel, or staying at the airport and just being like, this isn't worth it. I would give all my money in my wallet right now just to go home and forget this trip. So yeah, traveling is a very funny, interesting thing. When it goes well, it's great. There's nothing more excruciating than when it goes badly. It's just unbelievable, the frustration that can happen. And these movies capture that great, probably at a time when this was happening more and more, in the 70s and 80s, and people were planning these trips on computers and the technological age of Space Invaders and everything like that. But yeah, it's an interesting look at humans under pressure in an odd situation. And yeah, I agree with you. The score sucks in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I could go the rest of my life without ever hearing Holiday Road again too. Lindsey Buckingham, you get fucked. That song is
Whoa. Holiday Road is amazing.
Holiday Road is amazing 3 times in your life. It is not great 6 times in a movie when you've already heard it 100 times in your life because you watch Christmas Vacation every year. So it just really got on my nerves this time. I think it's a very saccharine, terrible song. But that, as was the style in the 80s, you had these songs in movies that were just terrible. But, what did we know? It was the 80s. Everyone was on cocaine. We didn't know good music then. So.
Yeah, so I would like to ask you guys kind of a question that's maybe not
okay. That's all the time related. We have.
Okay. Oh, thanks. Oh man, that's not necessarily directly related to these movies, but is related to what Tom was talking about before. Do any of you have any travel experiences that are really memorable to you?
I do.
Like a quick anecdote.
I do. Quick anecdote.
Okay.
Coming home from end of January from Salt Lake City, Utah, driving a U-Haul truck full of gear for a live event show. we hit a small town in Wyoming and find out that I-80 is closed all through Wyoming. And we can't go any further east. So we spend the night in it's Rock Springs, Wyoming. Spend the night there. I get a call that morning, or like 3 a.m., and it's my wife telling me that our dog at the time was having seizures. Oh. So she had to take him to the emergency vet, and unfortunately he had to be put down because he couldn't stop the seizures. So I am stuck in a small town in Wyoming. I can't go anywhere. My dog just died. So the next morning, wake up, check the road, check everything that we can about the roads, still closed. The front desk lady tells us a way that we can get out of there if we go south and then head east and kind of go around 80 and all of that. So we end up driving a trip that was going to take us 6 hours, took us almost 12, because I drove a U-Haul truck up the mountain, up the Rockies, and back down the Rockies. And we stopped in right on the west side of Nebraska. And I'm like, I can't go anymore. I've got to stop. So we stopped for the night. So I was, a day and a half late getting home.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry about that, Mike. It was that story was a little more depressing than I was hoping for. I'm sorry.
You're welcome. Down, Mike. Oh, okay. Yeah, you want another? You want a happy one? My mom and dad, instead of us going to Disney World, Disneyland, anywhere fun, we would go and see Mount Rushmore. I think every summer for summer vacation, we would drive up to Rapid City, see Wall Drug, see the Badlands, see Crazy Horse, and see Mount
the House of Mud,
Rushmore.
Yeah, you loved it.
I got a quick one for you. Build off that, Mike. We when I was a kid, we took our South Dakota vacation, and the whole time my dad was telling me about Custer State Park, and he's like, there's this huge lengthy loop and there's so many buffalo, you won't believe how many buffalo there are. And so this was the highlight of the entire trip, more than Rushmore or Crazy Horse or anything. So we pull up at the gate and there's no ranger there, and so we're just like, oh, we'll just pull through and pay when we leave. And we went on this really long loop, and I don't know how long it was. It felt like it was 3 hours, but it's a long, windy, twisty gravel loop. And we got to the exit gate and we didn't see one fucking bison or buffalo the entire fucking time. At this point, my dad's on the verge of insanity, and he pulls up at the ranger station and he's like, where are all the damn bison? And the ranger goes, Kevin Costner took them all over to Pierre to shoot some big movie over there.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
And they took all the bison for Dances with Wolves. Yeah. And then when my parents went to see it, the film ripped, so they didn't get to see it all the way through. And then the second time, there was a tornado, and so they didn't get to finish it. So it took 3 times to finally see the buffalo that he wanted to see. So.
In the movie.
In the movie, yeah.
Not in real life.
I just want to say that I've seen Crazy Horse so many times, I'm still waiting for them to actually finish it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think it's a scam. I think the family's running a scam over there.
I have a lot of rocks from Crazy Horse from visiting. You can always buy a rock to help pay for it.
Take this rock because we don't want to have to haul it up.
We don't want to have to haul it.
Right.
You're walking onto the lot and they're following you. They're just putting gravel in your pocket.
Just totally not related. But that dude's story is crazy. I remember reading about how he started building the monument, and it is insane. So look it up if you get a chance.
I'm very skeptical about what his kids are doing.
Yeah.
So. What about you guys, Kyle or Andrew? Do you have any good travel stories?
Let me think.
Maybe you'll have one when you get back.
I don't know if I have like specifically that a specific moment. I just know that growing up, we always took family road trips, and we we drove pretty much everywhere and anywhere. And my sister and I were always in the back, and we had an old igloo cooler that sat in between us with snacks and sandwiches and stuff that Mom always packed for us. And that was the line between my sister and I. You couldn't cross it. You couldn't lay on the cooler because that was encroaching on the other person. Now, when I say that we drove across country, this was a little, it was, oh man, what was that car? It was just this little tiny little 4-door car that, we barely, all 4 of us would fit in it. But man, did we drive across country in that thing like it was nobody's business. It was kind of like a Citation.
My mom had a Chevy Citation.
Yeah.
I remember
that is not a big car. That was not a big car.
We had a Buick Skylark.
It's the Dodge version of the Citation.
Anyways. Duster?
That was a Plymouth Duster.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
It was a Dodge
No, go ahead,
Horizon.
Kyle. So I'll tell you one that's pretty recent. I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago I went to Mexico. No, this has been longer. This has been longer than this. This might have been almost 10 years ago. I went to Mexico, and at the time, it was the first time I went to Mexico, or the second. I was a smoker at the time, which I don't know if you know is bad for you. I don't know if anybody's told you yet in your life, but smoking is not good for you. But especially not when you go from smoking outside in Iowa when it's 30 degrees to smoking in a tropical, damp, humid place. I got bronchitis really, really bad to the point where I couldn't breathe, and I had to go to a Mexican hospital, which you go to via cab because they won't send you an ambulance, and it's an hour ride from the resort, and it was very clean and nice. The most important thing, though, and I know people give America rightfully a lot of shit about insurance. I get it. Our healthcare is a lot worse than it could be. But it was very clear to me that I was not going to be seen unless I had a credit card. And I was asked 2 additional times while I was in a hospital bed with a nebulizer on and everything like that if they could have my credit card so they could, authorize more charges. So yeah, all in all, it's $950 out of my bank account to get bronchitis in Mexico, and I don't recommend it because then they have to fill your prescription, which they do by calling a pharmacy and having a taxi cab go get your pills and then drive them to the resort. So you pay $100 to the guy in the taxi for the medicine and the travel, and then you take it and you come back to your Peruvian doctor and you tell him, "Hey man, I was in Mexico. Look at all this stuff they gave me." And he goes, "Oh, this is really good stuff. This isn't even legal in America." And yeah, we don't do this here anymore. But yeah, this is just an herbal thing. How much does this cost? This doesn't have anything to do with it.
Just so everyone knows, his name is now Kyle Chacon.
Yes, right.
I will say for trip-wise, I have, because we drove everywhere as a child, I have been in every province of Canada, including Prince Edward Island, because we drove there from Iowa and drove through every single province of Canada.
Wow. Gabe, how about you?
Yeah, so I think you guys should be writing this stuff down. I think these sound like movies to me. So start writing this down. Mine.
I have better stories that would make movies, but they're not appropriate for this podcast.
Oh well, they don't have to be.
What?
You know what? Do it. Write them.
What could that possibly be?
Maybe we'll discuss it. We'll discuss the final movie on this podcast.
Remind me to tell you guys
it's an
about
adult
the time.
podcast.
Remind me to tell you guys about the story I call Caught Red-Handed, and also the story of when I had my barium enema at the hospital.
Oh, Lord. I know both these
stories. I don't know if I
great.
want to know these stories.
Oh, you'll love them. They're a lot of fun to tell over drinks, just probably not on this podcast.
Yep.
Okay. So my travel story really quick. My freshman year in college, I went to Southern Illinois University, and I didn't have a car. So I was on my way home for Christmas on a Greyhound bus, and the bus, there was a transfer in Champaign, Illinois. My initial bus was late. It was behind schedule. And I literally stepped off that bus. I didn't realize it at the moment, but I realized later. I watched my transfer bus leave as I stepped off the first bus. Oh. It was leaving. And I got to Champaign, Illinois. I'm a freshman in college. I don't have any money. I don't have credit cards. I don't have anything. You know, I'm just like starting out as an adult kind of. And, you know, we didn't have cell phones at the time. Making calls back home was difficult. So they said, okay, well, the next bus is tomorrow morning. Like, there's no bus until tomorrow morning. I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So they said, well, we'll put you up in a hotel room tonight, and then you can catch the bus in the morning and get home. And so I'm trying to get home for Christmas. I'm stuck in Champaign, Illinois, where I don't know anybody. And so they throw me in a cab, and I go over to the hotel. And on the way, I see this little movie theater. And it's about halfway between the bus station and the hotel. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing anything. It's probably like, I don't know, 7, 8 o'clock at night or whatever. I'm not doing anything. Maybe I'll go back to this movie theater and see if I catch a movie. So I got to the hotel, and then I walked in December over to this movie theater. And it was an independent movie theater. It was kind of like the Varsity or the Fleur here in Des Moines. Independent films. Well, there was some movie called Wings of Desire.
Nice.
Which I had never heard of, didn't know anything about, but it was the only thing playing. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go and watch this movie. It turned out to be one of the best movies I've ever seen in my entire life. It was a fantastic experience. And if I hadn't gotten stranded in Champaign, Illinois at Christmas time, I never would have watched that movie. And it's a fantastic movie. I'm sure I have recommended it before, but that's one of those travel moments that's memorable to me because it was awful at first, but turned out to be a good thing in the end.
That's good. Crazy.
Yeah, that's my quick travel.
All right, I have a couple others, but we could keep going on and on. So
we'll have to spin up another podcast.
Yes, called Travel Smack. Let's put it to a vote, everyone. Tom.
Vacation.
Andrew.
Vacation.
I hit the wrong button. Gabe.
Oh, man, they're both so good. I love so many quotes from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Those aren't pillows. You're going the wrong way. How do they know where we're going? Such great quotes. I should have said that earlier. But I think I would watch Vacation more often, so Vacation.
All right. And Kyle.
I have to go with... They're both really good. Yes, they are. I'm going with my spirit animal, John Candy, though. I'm going to go with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Okay. All right. Last bit of trivia. According to the biographical book, John Hughes, A Life in Film, one actor who played a truck driver was only supposed to have one line and work for one day. Because of the weather-related delays during production, Hughes chose to keep him on standby. The actor ended up working enough days while the crew waited for the snow to come that he earned enough money to make a down payment on a house.
Oh, shit.
The actor in question is Troy Evans, who was uncredited as the shy truck driver in the movie.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, he was on screen for like 3 seconds.
Yes.
I mean, that's amazing. 80s housing was different, but
yeah. For the scene in Dodge City where Clark taunts the ornery bartender who ends up shooting him with a blank-loaded shotgun, one of the prop guys ended up playing a practical joke on the cast members during one of the takes. During that particular take, after the bartender shoots at Clark, the prop guy tossed down a dummy from the second level of the set, and the entire cast jumped in a surprise
That would have been
afterwards.
funny.
All right. Well, while I try to achieve simple math, why don't we go on to recommendations for this month? We'll start with Andrew.
Cool. This way, no one can take mine. So this is probably one of my funny favorite movies that John Candy was in when I was growing up, and actually introduced me also to Tom Hanks, which that probably gives it away right there. But Tom Hanks and John Candy do a wonderful duo as brothers, weirdly enough, in Ron Howard's Splash, which the movie itself is kind of weird and cheeky, even today, like watching it with Daryl Hannah as a mermaid. And it's cute. It's an 80s movie. It's funny, haha. And it's a good watch. So Splash is my recommendation this one.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Gabe?
Well, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I was trying to think of funny road movies that I had seen. I thought maybe I should be, snooty and do some classic road movie with like Bob Hope or something in it. But I'm actually going to recommend Dumb and Dumber. It's one of my favorite movies. When I first saw it, I hated it. I thought it really lives up to its name, and it's got to be the dumbest movie I've ever seen. But I gained some appreciation for it later and really started to appreciate, just the acting and the improvisation and the writing so as far as funny road movies go, I think Dumb and Dumber's up there for me.
All right.
Just let it go. It'll be warm.
Thank you, Gabe.
I love it now.
Kyle.
I'm gonna. I was going to recommend a TV series, but I know we sometimes get a little tight about that. So, because I just finished watching, not just finished, but the Game of Thrones, House of Dragons. So I thought, and this, by the way, has nothing to do with the movies we watched today, as is usual. But there is a really good dragon movie that stars Matthew McConaughey and Christian Bale.
Oh, I know.
And it was done in the 2000s, called Reign of Fire. So if you have never seen this movie, which most humans alive haven't, because I don't think it did very well, check out Reign of Fire. It has nothing to do with either of these two movies. But if you're into fantasy nonsense like I am, it's enjoyable.
All right.
I've seen parts of that. Yeah. The visual effects for the dragons are pretty decent.
Yeah, I really enjoy it.
Tom.
So this got a little bit interesting. So it's a recent movie, but there's a Chevy Chase connection. I want to recommend Confess Fletch, which is it was limited in theaters and kind of direct to video. So I'm a fan of the Fletch novels from the 1970s and 80s, and Chevy Chase's Fletch made it a little bit kind of more goofy. Fletch is still a very funny character in the books, but less slapsticky. And so they've been talking about making another Fletch movie for years, and Greg Mottola and John Hamm made one last year, and it just came out a couple weeks ago, and it's very funny. It's not the Chevy Chase Fletch, and I think people really get hung up on that there's some kind of sacrilegious, you can't make another Fletch movie without Chevy Chase, which is unfortunate because there are 10 Fletch books, and they are really great mystery stories, and they're very funny. So I would recommend Confess Fletch. John Hamm is very funny in it. John Slattery is in it, and it's a funny movie, but it's just not goofy, slapsticky. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and but I definitely recommend it because I really hope people watch this because the books are great and they deserve to get made into movies. And John Hamm plays an excellent Erwin Fletcher.
All right. I still need to check it out.
It's good.
So I'm going with my ultimate road movie. I did a lot of thinking about this and which one I was going to pick. And I kind of have to give it to this, considering that Vacation and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles were on a lot when I was a kid. This movie may have been on an awful lot. There may have been a lot of times that the kids in the neighborhood, we would ride our big wheels and we would try and reenact some of this movie. But it's actually from 1977. It was directed by Hal Needham. It stars Burt Reynolds, Sally Field, Jerry Reed, and by far, the older I get, the more he becomes my favorite character, Jackie Gleason, and that's Smokey and the Bandit. So if you have not seen this, and I don't know how you haven't seen this, just like if you haven't seen Dumb and Dumber, or you need to watch Smokey and the Bandit. It is, I mean, totally 70s. It definitely has, I would say it has aged really well because of all the practical stunt work that is done. But, you know, CB radios, who has CBs anymore?
We had one. I remember that.
Oh, I always wanted one so bad as a kid. But it would have made all those trips to Mount Rushmore even better. But Smokey and the Bandit, if you haven't seen it. All right.
A long time.
Let's... Jackie Gleason, Sheriff Buford T. Justice, might be my favorite movie character of all time. Let's poke the monkey and find out who won.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner by decision is National Lampoon's Vacation!
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think
I was
so.
worried at the beginning.
Yeah, I like them both. They're both such fun movies to watch, and you can't really say don't go watch either of these. But I think that's right. That sounds right. Vacation is a slightly better version.
Yep.
Again,
All right.
it doesn't mean the quality of the movie. They're both great movies.
Oh, right.
They're both very fun. Yeah.
Right. We would appreciate it if you could leave us a review on whatever podcasting service you use. It helps us reach new listeners. If you like us, tell your friends. If you hate us, tell your enemies. You can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmack. In December, we take a break from our annual Christmas movie matches and celebrate the Wright brothers as Flight takes on Sully to see if they have the right stuff. For Gabe, Andrew, Tom, Kyle, and myself, thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
Right stuff, baby. I love the white stuff, baby. In the middle of an Oreo.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.
Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.